My name is Dr. Gilles Lamrache, and my miracle story is about my son Christopher. So I'd like you to imagine a beautiful summer afternoon in 1999 at the end of June in Northern Ontario. Christopher, his friend Matthew, and I were at our summer house at the lake, and at the evening I decided to go to sleep and the boys wanted to stay up around 10 o'clock. And I remember very explicitly saying, be very careful. I don't want you guys playing by the water. I mean, I know you're 14 and you're mature and you know what you're doing, but just be careful and, I'll see you in the morning. So I went to bed and fell asleep very, very quickly. And shortly thereafter, I heard these boom, boom. And I awoke, but went right back to sleep. And consciously, I thought, I guess they took some of those fireworks that we had put away that we're going to use the next day for a family party. As my neighbor would later tell me, about 20 seconds later, I heard a third boom. And it wasn't really the boom that awoke me. It was the sound of my son's voice, screaming, "Help, I can't see." And as a parent, you can just imagine that my brain awoke very, very quickly, and I realized, without having been there, that a firework had probably blown up in his face. I ran down to the lake, 88 steps to the lake. We have a house on a beautiful hill. And I got there seeing him frozen, his face on fire. And I mean literally on fire. Flames still coming out. And if you've ever smelt burnt flesh, it really doesn't smell too good. I'm not a very big man, and at 14, Christopher probably, weighed almost as much as me. And I remember picking him up by the seat of his pants and the scruff of his neck, and literally taking him and dunking his face in the water to put the fire out. I reacted, obviously. The boy was burnt, he could not see, and I carried him, I don't know how, but I carried him up 88 stairs. But somewhere on that trek, I came to realize that I had no vehicle. I was about 60 kilometers from the hospital. I had no vehicle. I screamed. By the time I got there, my neighbor had actually brought his vehicle, and we had our whole deck set up for the next day for the party. So there were coolers with, soft drinks and beer and everything. So I took a towel, dumped it in there, wrapped it in ice, put it on his face. I drove to the hospital at probably the speed of light, and all the way, all my son could say, "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry, Dad." We got to the hospital. Obviously, he was taken in very, very quickly. And, what are we to do? The boy is burnt. He is blind in both eyes. They start irrigating his eyes. I stay by his side. And all he's asking for is his brother and sister. He wants that level of support. And probably 30 to 40 minutes into him laying on the gurney in the hospital, he says to me, "Daddy, would you adjust me?" And I thought, I would have never thought of adjusting him in this crisis. So of course I looked at him, he's laying on the gurney, and I looked at him and I adjusted his atlas. He had a really serious subluxation of his atlas. So I adjusted his atlas and I continued to check him. And there was no ophthalmologist in this Northern Ontario hospital at the time. He was away for the weekend. I knew the physician. He brought me into the exam room. We looked at Christopher's eyes with a slit lamp. And what he told me was that Christopher's eye was burnt, both eyes were burnt 50% into the vitreous. His face at the time was burnt this way. The end of his nose, if you've ever cooked anything on a campfire, whether it's a marshmallow or a hot dog like we do in Canada, was burnt to a crisp. So the doctor and I are having a discussion, and he says, we could wait till Monday to have him see the ophthalmologist. And I said, "But Rick, he's your child. What do you do?" He said, "I think I would bring him to Toronto and bring him to Sick Children's Hospital." And I said, "Well, then let's make the arrangements and get him there." So by the next morning, we're at the Sick Children's Hospital in Toronto. Christopher is seen by 3 plastic surgeons and by an ophthalmologist. The ophthalmologist says, may or may not regain his sight, we don't really know. The good thing is that the eye usually heals quite well or heals quickly. We will know in the next 48 to 72 hours. But it doesn't really look good because he has burnt 50% into his eyeball. So you can just imagine that. The team of 3 plastic surgeons come and see him. They say, oh, you know, he's young, he's got beautiful skin. We should be able to, you know, correct that with 2 or 3 skin grafts. And it's unlikely that he'll have any scars, and he'll go on with the rest of his life, and everything should be okay. From their perspective. My perspective is that, you know, my child could potentially be blind for the rest of his life. Am I feeling a little bit guilty? Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit guilty. So I keep adjusting him. They tell me, let's not keep him in the hospital because that's where the worst infections take place. So I check into a hotel with him. The first thing that I do is I take the blankets from the foot of the bed, I tuck them in at the head of the bed, and I make him lay so I have access to his head and neck. And I adjust him pretty much every hour on the hour. When you hear your child groaning and crying and with pain, you do whatever you can, and I don't sleep much around those days. By the Wednesday, he awakens, having, you know, he hadn't eaten very much, and we did have him on medication to help with the pain. He awakens, and we start chatting a little bit, and he says to me, do you have a blue shirt on? And I went, yeah, I have a blue shirt on. He says, I can tell you have a blue shirt on. I'm going, yay, something's happening. And I keep adjusting, obviously. By the end of that day, Christopher watched a movie, regained full sight. If you saw him today, doesn't have a scar on his face. Because on the following Monday, when we went back to see the plastic surgeons, the young lady who was the intern walked in, or the resident rather walked in, she went, oh my God, what have you done? And I said, what do you mean? She said, what have you been putting on his face? I said, nothing. I've just been making sure that it's kept clean. You told me, you know, infection's dangerous. I've been keeping it clean, using Q-tips to clean them. And I've been adjusting him. And she says, what's that? And so I described chiropractic to her. And really, she knew little about chiropractic. I described chiropractic. I talked about the nervous system. I talked about neuroimmunology. And she says, you know, that really makes sense. Because one of the major reasons why children, because she worked mostly with children, why children scar after a burn is that the skin gets infected. And he didn't get any infections. And if you saw him today, there's not a mark on his face. What's the answer? My belief is that because the body has an innate ability to heal, provided there's no interference with the nervous system, that by maintaining his spine in the best alignment possible under this crisis, that his immune system worked at its optimum, and that the nervous system really did what it's made to do, to heal the body, because the power that made the body heals the body.